Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We continue to get complaints about this government's vaccine rollout because it looks like this government continues to sit on over 100,000 doses. In fact, if the 150,000 doses currently sitting on a shelf somewhere were used as a first shot, 40% of adult Manitobans would have some immunity instead of 25% today. Now, this government has argued they're holding back to ensure second doses, but we've received multiple calls from at-risk seniors and people with underlying conditions who don't know when their second dose is coming, whether it's in weeks or in months. If holding back vaccines to ensure second shots has been the priority, why are people waiting months worrying for when it'll happen?
The Honourable First Minister.
Members a few weeks behind, and of course it is true that we did continue to prioritize the second vaccine in the early days of the vaccine rollout because, quite rightly, our seniors in personal care homes are some of our most vulnerable citizens, and our folks who work with them are vulnerable as well. And so we did continue with the second vaccine, but that was over a month or 5 weeks ago. The member needs to get with the times. The big issue, of course, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is not the pace of our rollout, which is fine and is compatible or better than most of the provinces. What is an issue is the availability of vaccines, where we still rank about 40th in the world. And so this is why we've taken steps to procure vaccines, to develop a vaccine supportive model here in Canada, so that we no longer have to be at the back of the bus when it comes to getting vaccines because of the federal government's inability to get them here.
The honourable member for St. Boniface on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Over the weekend, several pharmacies announced they had leftover vaccines and invited people for shots to ensure that no doses were wasted. While we're glad someone is doing that, we still want to make sure that priority populations get access and that it won't just be a free-for-all. Now, there are still people with underlying conditions and frontline essential workers, especially people working in education, as well as transit drivers who this government has left behind. Last week, Manitoba was the last province to vaccinate police officers, and it was only done after we mentioned it. When will this government ensure that every person with an underlying condition, as well as those who work in education and transit, are on the priority list?
Order. Order. The Honourable First Minister.
A couple of points, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm excited to see the federal government come out with a budget for the first time in 2.5 years. I hope that they address the long overdue negligence that's been evident in their lack of support for health care funding. And I'm pleased to see the NDP support our push, and the premiers of all parties are supporting this, just not the leader of the Liberal Party in Manitoba. I would say the vaccine team has worked diligently to get the most vulnerable in our province vaccines, and if he doesn't agree, he might like to recommend which reserve doesn't get a vaccine so that he can make his numbers look better.